Much like Icarus flying too close to the sun, AAA games are also suffering. The reason for that, cut and dry, simple, as quick as I can make it, is because they're too fucking expensive to make. The other issue is they all have like 16,000 developers, so I don't know if you're familiar with the old adage, too many cooks in the kitchen. First off, before we get too deep into it, let's really explain what a AAA game is, because that's something I struggled with a little bit. AAA means big budget, with normally more than 100 people working on the game. That's what a AAA is. One of the big reasons we're seeing this like fall off in AAA games is the fact that it's not just a $70 game anymore. The idea of the $70 game is fucking out the window. You pay $70 for the standard edition to try it out and see if you like it. And then if you like it, you're going to spend another $70 to $100 on DLC to make the game enjoyable and playable, or keep you competitive if it's an online game. I understand it's a lot of work to make a game, and it's probably one of the most challenging things you've ever had to do. I can't even code a little guy jumping around shooting a gun. But there's got to be a way to make it cheaper, just because gamers are gamers. We don't have a lot of money. We're spending it all on our games. Quit taking it from our pockets. We need our sand dollars. To break that down, we're kind of seeing this rise, right? Because games need to become bigger to attract more attention. Bigger games need a bigger budget and more developers. Games that have a bigger budget need to sell more copies to be profitable. And then once these games have reached their market cap, they need to be sold at a higher price to make them profitable. And it brings us back to the beginning. In order to justify selling the game at a higher price, the game needs to be bigger. Another large point affecting the AAA gaming space is the fact that when you have these like massive games with 5-6 developers on it, you do encounter this too many cooks in the kitchen, like I said before. And where that becomes an issue is that you're going to lose a lot of your focus on the point you want to get across for the game. Because if you have 7 people trying to direct something, it's never going to come off as clean as if one person did it with the help of others. The point I'm trying to see, if we look at Stardew versus any other AAA game, it's very clear what Stardew is going for. It's very easy to follow and understand like what you're supposed to be doing, what the vibe is, how certain things will affect the world and change the story you're creating. And we lose that in AAA because it's not just one person and one person's story that they're telling. It's like 15 people trying to combine and tell this collaborative piece. Now, this might be a little bit of a controversial take. I think something that has affected the AAA gaming space a lot more than we want to admit it has is online gaming. Because now our narratives and our storytelling and the things that are really captivating and grasping were those enclosed, tight adventures that we would design for ourselves. But now it has to incorporate massive amounts of audiences that are all going to play together. And you have to adjust this game to meet the majority of people and not just give options so that a singular person can enjoy the game to the maximum of their imagination. So I can understand why that industry would suffer a little bit, and that's where I think like indie games and even AA games are succeeding so much right now, is because they are generally a more enclosed personal experience opposed to these AAA titles. A good thing to look at too in recent history was Hi-Fi Rush. It was released by Tango Gameworks and it was published by Bethesda. You just took an escape back into like the world of PS2 and like GameCube, which had like the biggest library of AAA titles because they weren't forced to appeal to such a huge audience. It was a much more narrow scope for them. I think Hi-Fi Rush was a game that showed us what AAA gaming could be if we focused on making the experiences fun and worth it, as opposed to just lining our pockets a little more with greed and making games that are huge and flashy. In the recent scape of AAA games, one of my biggest complaints is that the worlds always feel a little empty. It's like you move into a brand new house, but there's no furniture. There's so much like open, empty space. And if we look at Skyrim, there's not a lot of empty space. There's something kind of everywhere. There's obviously some barren spots, but it's so full. It feels so lived in. But I think these big AAA games, they're always trying to make it bigger, and they're not worrying about filling that space. They just want it to be big because it's appealing for marketing or something like that. The bigger the game, the more money they can charge for it because it's bigger than the other one. But I don't think gamers really give a shit about how big it is. I think they want the quality. The quality is what's going to sell it, because if we look at Helldivers 2, it's not a huge game. There's there's a lot of maps, but they're all kind of the fucking same. But what matters in that one is that the quality of the playtime you have is the best. That's what sells it. That's what makes it so fun, and the comedy behind it. And it's a tight, uniform story that we're all working together. So we're not trying to encompass everyone. You know what you're signing up for when you go into Helldivers 2. They're writing the story based on the player's action. The biggest problem AAA games are suffering is greed. Hands down, it's greed. And one of the bigger problems, I think it was like mostly mainstreamed when Battlefield 2 came out, is like loot boxes. It just feels like the developers want to keep us fucking hostage. Tie us up to the water cooler and then watch as they fuck our wallets. They keep you tied up because they're preying on gamers' FOMOs, because everything in gaming now is to do with your cosmetics. It's how cool you look, how long you've been playing the game, what emotes you have, things like that. They prey on that by releasing these like one-time cosmetics, one-time emotes that are locked behind RNG in loot boxes, essentially, which cost you real-world hard-earned sand dollars. Yeah, obviously, like, if I was a business person and I wanted to make the most fucking money possible, I'm gonna tie you up to the water cooler and have my way dry with your wallet while I release all these sick cosmetics that are gonna give you the clout locked behind loot crates. Like, it's not enough to sell 7.3 million copies of your $70 game that people probably spent $140 on to get the deluxe version. And now you're gonna charge them probably roughly about 15 to 20 bucks a month to get the loot boxes so that they can stay relevant and feel cool. Like, you're just a fucking predator at that point. Grow up. Anyway, I think the difference that I would like to see in AAA games is something a little more like Hi-Fi Rush. I think I'd like to see the AAA space take a step back and start caring about the people buying their products and not caring about the executives that they're lining the pockets for. Yeah, just want to talk about that. See ya.